Go.
Can we get going? We've got a lot to get to, Chad. Let's get going.
We're going already.
We've got to get. Let's go. Come on.
Good evening, everybody, or good morning, depending on watching this. Welcome back to Hoops HD. This is our Hoops HD report and Championship Week video notebook, although that will come at the end of the show tonight. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood, joined by a full panel of Hoops HD experts, John Teitel and Joby Fortson, John Stalika, Matt Zukowski, and live from the Puppet Bunker, locked up there. I still got locked up on my screen, even David Griggs.
I hate it here. Chad, what does this do to make Championship Week better? Like, it doesn't make the games better. It doesn't make the show better. It makes nothing better. Why am I locked in here?
David, it is, Joe Lunardi's in a bunker. We put you in a bunker.
No, he's not. We've been over this. He's in a studio. They're pretending it's a bunker. He's not locked in a box.
I don't know. He really kind of looked like a bunker to me.
It's not a...
Well, let's get into this. And before we get to any of the games, and before we get to conference tournaments, and before we get to all of that, we do want to discuss the news that's been coming down the last few days here. Yahoo Sports Report started it all off with the announcement with information involving tons of players' names, several of whom are still playing, that may have been contacted by this guy, Andy Miller, who was part of the FBI investigation, and may or may not have received impermissible benefits from him. Then it got even worse when an audio recording was probably listened to by Yahoo Sports of a wiretap conversation involving Arizona head coach Sean Miller. And Teitel, you are our Arizona guy.
Chad, just real quick, sorry, it was ESPN that reported the wiretap, not
ESPN. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. It was ESPN that reported the wiretap, but apparently a wiretap that nobody has actually heard, at least I haven't heard, but allegedly has statements in it by Sean Miller that allegedly state that he wanted to pay $100,000 to get DeAndre Ayton to come to the school, and we know DeAndre Ayton does play for Arizona, has been cleared to play. Sean Miller is not coaching for the time being, at least, but Teitel, kind of want to throw it over to you, being an Arizona guy. It's an incredibly bad week for your Wildcats when you add on to it Alonzo Trier's suspension last week as well.
It has not been the best of times. It has been the worst of times in Tucson. Excellent summary by you and David, so thank you for that. We could do a whole show on it. I'll try to keep it brief. Number one, it's an embarrassment to a Wildcat like myself and all my other friends and alums, because we've cheered for this team for so long, and we love it when they win, and it kills us when they lose because we're invested, and we hate that Sean is the best coach to never make the Final Four, and a lot of people thought this was the year, and obviously I think that ship done sailed. As far as what I think should happen, with the three main parties in question, if Trier still has a banned substance in him and cannot provide a good excuse, I want him gone. If Trier took $100,000, or if his people took $100,000, I want him gone. And if Miller is guilty of these egregious allegations about money and recruiting and everything, then I want him gone too. And it'll take us a while to get back up there, because one reason we were so successful is because Miller had a top 10 recruiting class every year. But if that is built on a foundation of money rather than good recruiting, quote unquote, then shame on all of us for believing in this team.
Not only was there the Arizona news, there's also some news. Miles Bridges from Bridges from Michigan State was a person whose name came up. He has been cleared by the NCAA. There was apparently a lunch paid for by a recruiter for his family that he was unaware of. He did pay $40, David, to the cost of that lunch to a charity, and was reinstated, suspended and immediately reinstated, correct?
Yes, there is what's called the NCAA Appeals Committee, and it's even housed in a separate building from the rest of the NCAA. It was similar to what happened with Cam Newton. Essentially, if you were declared ineligible, this is who you appeal to get eligible in if you think there is cause for an appeal. In this case, there was. It was because the dollar amount was so low, it was less than $1,000. Typically, you were declared, like if typically you're going to be declared ineligible most frequently by the school, and in this case, if I'm not mistaken, it was Michigan State who declared him ineligible and then immediately appealed to have him reinstated, and it was granted. Pending paying the money back. And I think that since the dollar amount was so low, that was all he had to do. He didn't have to complete any community service or anything like that. But whatever it was that needed to be done, it has been completed, and he is once again cleared to play.
Right. And
I apologize if that was way too hyper-technical, but that is what happened.
Yeah, and as if all that wasn't bad enough, on top of that, you have issues going on with college basketball, where there's reports that Will Wade is being investigated for recruiting issues at LSU, nothing to do with the FBI thing. San Diego head coach Lamont Smith arrested for a domestic disturbance last night or the night before. It has been a bad weekend for college basketball. And Joby, I just want to get your take on all of this and just this horrific stain on the sport that we all love.
Yeah, I know it's not been the banner week. I mean, that goes without saying. But, it was stated by off camera by one of you. College basketball has had worse instances. I mean, the Dave Bliss element. I mean, the guy tried to frame a player who had passed away. I mean, there are worse instances. The breadth.
He tried to frame a player that another one of his players murdered.
Yes.
Yeah, that was. I mean, let's not sugarcoat it by just saying he passed him.
Exactly. And so we've seen, but that was Baylor. The thing that makes this maybe a little different, I'm not going to say worse, a little different, is the breadth of schools and players, the numbers of different schools affected. It looks like an endemic problem, not a Baylor problem, for instance. We'll see how this all shakes out. The bombshell, we'll see if the Yahoo lists that came out, for instance, if they are complete. Also, there's been in some cases, this Dawkins guy was padding his expense report. So, because I know of one instance where there's physical evidence the player's family wasn't there at the claimed meal, which the IRS, I'm sure, will be very happy to hear that he took an expense report deduction on that. He's going to need a lawyer on that end. But
they're going to all need lawyers.
Yeah, they're all going to need lawyers. But the breadth of this and the number of programs, literally almost all the programs you would naturally name from a Duke in North Carolina to an Arizona, are all implicated in some way. Kentucky, all are named, and we're going to see how this all shakes out. I think the doom and gloom is a little over the top, though. I do think college basketball will survive. And
that would also include programs you wouldn't typically expect, because I think Edmund Sumner was also part of that list. Because, in fact, my understanding is the date of one of those payments, I think, was the same day Xavier played Villanova back in 2016 and actually beat them. So there's a chance this may have been, Ed Sumner's father. But, again, we're still trying to get some details as to whether or not that money had also been deposited. So it just seems to be a little bit of incomplete record keeping here.
Well, what I'll say on all this here is that, we do live in a country whose system of, accusation of this stuff is innocent until proven guilty. All we have is a lot of accusations, and I'm not prepared to indict anybody or, whether criminally indict them or indict them in our court of opinion until we have all the facts out. But Matt, I know you wanted to have some comments on this also.
Yeah, like one point I want to make is I think in some of these cases, like in the Arizona case, LSU's the new investigation, they're basically accused of cheating to get these kids into the program. A lot of these cases, the kids were already in the program, and I think unbeknownst to the coach, some of these guys that were pro prospects or borderline pro prospects, or even the case of Dawkins, just locally known kids from the Michigan area, I think they were getting money aside from that based on their future pro potential, not necessarily the college coaches being involved with it.
Again, alleged to have gotten money. Let's keep it clear here. Yes.
And just to clarify a couple of things, I think that too many people, not not on our site, but just in general, be it in the media or in the population at large, are not differentiating between the National Collegiate Athletic Association and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Much of what is against NCAA rules is not illegal. The FBI doesn't care, and I think a lot of this is potentially collateral damage. There isn't anything illegal in and of itself for going to dinner or accepting a gift, even though that would be considered an extra benefit by the NCAA. I think the target of the FBI and the genesis of all this is these agencies, and I guess ASM in particular, that are participating in bribery, which is a crime. So again, like, does it really matter to the FBI that some of these players, we at Sumner, at Xavier, or whoever, took money? Probably not. It's not.
It does if they didn't report the income. And
yeah, but I mean, in some of these cases, you're not talking about a lot of money. You're talking about a lunch.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I mean Van Fleet was $1,000, but when you're talking $100,000,
okay, $100,000 is a different animal. Yeah. I was just referring to the spread. Yeah,
the one where I think we're Dennis Smith was accused of having like $70,000 or something taken while he was still in college.
Well, I guess let's we could do hours and hours on this, and I think this is not a story that's going to be wrapped up in the next couple of weeks. I think that when we get to the off season, we'll probably be talking about all of this a lot as more and more comes out, and for the next couple of years. But let's kind of turn to the 2017-2018 basketball season, because despite all that, there are still games going on, and some great games, including where we're going to start things off tonight. If I can get the screen up here. Maybe I can't get it up, but there's the screen coming up right now.
Great show, Chad. We just can't get
There's a great game we just finished tonight, though. Virginia Tech, who trailed almost the entire game, pulled off the miracle last-second win at home over Duke. Titel, you sold on these Hokies now?
I thought they were going to blow it, so I kind of am. I mean, if I recall, this team has now beaten Duke and Virginia within a few weeks of each other, granted at home and granted by like a single point each time. But it's hard to find a team with two better wins on their resume. We're talking about, when you look at the JNT rankings, Joby, number 1 and number 7. Any team that can beat those two, I assume, not a lock for the tourney, at least white jersey, protected seed. I don't know.
Yeah. And Joby, remember, Virginia was at Virginia.
Yeah. But they throw in the Clemson win on Wednesday also, Joby. I mean,
Virginia Tech's they're peaking right now. I loved, by the way, if those who did not have the volume up during this Virginia Tech Duke, you missed some great rants from Dan Dockich. And I'm not necessarily a fan of him.
Are you joking?
All of us who sit, and I'm not just talking those who wear baby blue, but for all of us who sit in the ACC, to call out K for what he does every time with the officials, to actually call him out, which no one ever calls him out. They finally called him out. Dockich called him out. I think every single ACC fan from Boston down to Miami is giving a golf clap to Dockich right now.
And that will probably be the last Duke game he'll call.
Yeah, I think Dockich will be getting a call from Bristol, Connecticut to be quiet from here on out.
What did he say? I was watching, but I wasn't.
He basically, and Justin, as in quick shot, he showed how when Krzyzewski calls a timeout because Virginia Tech goes on a run, Krzyzewski summons the officials over. He's like, "What? You can't do that. What's the official doing? They'd never come over to another coach. I don't care how many wins you have." Then later, Buzz was talking about how Buzz is so unrespected in the conference. He has to introduce himself to Kay before every game in a joking way. And he said, well, the officials don't. They're getting gift cards.
Okay. That was zing for Dan Dockich. All right.
And it just the whole time on it, he didn't – those are the highlights. But
okay.
And if we want to look at another game, though, if we want to talk about Vodtech, though, Matt, Vodtech's one loss this week was at home to Louisville over the weekend, and this Louisville team has been just hovering right there in the bubble. How important of a game was that for them?
That's massive, because that's another tournament team Louisville have beaten on the road, and their resume is a few road wins, but man, that's good enough. I think that unless they lose out, that probably gets them into the tournament, I think.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's go to the upcoming schedule. This is the final week of the regular season here for all of these teams, except for the Big Ten, regular season is already done. But Stalika, as far as the games coming up this week, Florida State at Clemson tomorrow night. I'm sorry, Miami and North Carolina tomorrow night. Florida State at Clemson on Wednesday. Virginia at Louisville Thursday. Another huge week in the ACC, isn't it?
Yeah, but I'm also looking at a possible trap game for Syracuse going to BC on Wednesday because let's not forget the Orange still have their own bubble problems, and they're also going to be hosting Clemson on Saturday.
Yeah, 2 must-wins for the Cuse, I think, and the Clemson game, David. A Clemson team that's kind of still heading in the wrong direction and has a chance to bounce back with the home game, though, and that trip to Syracuse.
Yeah, and again, the injuries have kind of bothered them. They've overcome it for the most part, but they're still good, but they're not as good. Florida State, that's going to be a really good game. I mean, both those teams solidly in the tournament. It's just a resume-building game. But the ones that are really, Virginia at Louisville, is it 1 seed caliber versus bubble team? But Louisville, NC State, this is such a big – I mean, when I look at all the teams, I think Louisville is the most on the bubble, and it has the most to either gain or lose this week, and probably lose when you look at those – the two games that they have.
With Titel there, I think Slika circled this game for us, though. Pitt at Notre Dame on Wednesday. A chance for the Panthers to go 0-18 in the ACC. The team that scored 7 points and made 1 field goal in the first half against Virginia this week. Is this disgusting what's going on in Pittsburgh?
It is, but they have a new coach, and they had Cameron Johnson leave. Like, I can explain away some of it. I don't know if I can explain away 1 field goal and a half. That was pretty – Joby, I know you guys can play defense, but come on.
And what's crazy is it was a questionable foul on a 3-point shot that got them essentially half their points. That's what's crazy.
And of course, we got to discuss it, David. Saturday night, the second time of the season, North Carolina at Duke. You got some fun facts about this game, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, they are one more than 7 miles apart. I mean, they're not quite 10 miles apart. They're 2 less than that, and they've never met in the NCAA tournament. But this one should be fun. It's more of a litmus test than a stakes game. It normally is when these two teams play. But I really like how both of them playing. I know Duke lost tonight, but they lost on the road in a pretty bonkers environment in front of a team that was charged up in a game where they led most of the way, maybe even looking ahead a little bit. But North Carolina, I think that when I watch these two teams in the last couple of weeks, they've played better than they have at any other point this season. I've always been critical of Duke and their road play, at least in years past, but I think that they're really road strong this year, and they're at home on Saturday. It should be a fun one. It normally is. And, maybe in a week's time we'll get to see the two play again because, Virginia is going to be number one. This could be an ACC semifinal game, and it's I don't know. It's just going to be an intense, emotional, great environment.
The loser may fall to the 4 or even 5 seed, depending what NC State and Clemson do, given tiebreakers. I believe.
Oh, wow, okay.
No, it's very interesting. Just if you remember, NC State has those great wins. Duke, Carolina is part of that package. So,
And NC State a much easier week this week with Georgia Tech road, Louisville home. So look at them to potentially steal a 2 or 3 seed, definitely.
Yeah.
In the ACC tournament, not the NCAA, obviously.
Right.
Let's jump over to the big East here. And Matt, your Marquette team had let's start with the bubble. And your Marquette team, who is squarely on it, a really, really bad loss to DePaul and needed overtime to beat Georgetown tonight.
I thought the Georgetown game was going to be a tough little game. And, had you told me a week ago, I would have signed up any win there. Saturday, on the other hand, was an abject failure. That game was it. They supposed to start 2 points the first 4 minutes and then came back, controlled most of the first half, and then in the second half, good Lord, they might as well have stayed in the locker room. That was an ugly effort. Turned it over, got killed on the boards. Just didn't play like a team desperate to make the tournament, which they actually sort of did tonight with their back really against the wall. But no, that one, if their name isn't called on Selection Sunday, you're going to look right to that game, and that's probably the more likely of the outcomes at this point.
And Stalika, your Xavier team is now in sole possession of first place following the Creighton team we were ready to give up on, coming up with an amazing home win on Saturday over Villanova.
Oh, not me. I've been trumpeting Creighton all February long.
And the amazing thing is that was because Xavier only played one game last week where they struggled in the beginning against Georgetown and gradually pulled away thanks to guys like Najee Marshall and Quentin Gooden. But Creighton did fill a big hole in their resume as far as getting a signature win against a protected seed in Nova. So that definitely helps Creighton out after they got smashed at Butler earlier in the week.
And John T., I know we'll go a little quick here. We got a lot to get to still tonight, though, but here's the upcoming schedule in the Big East. What are you looking forward to in this final week of the regular season?
So Saturday, I want to see if Villanova can beat Georgetown by 50 points. When I saw them in D.C. last month, they beat them they were up by 40 in the second half. So I think it's a legit possibility. Other than that, just all the teams around the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 line, Seton Hall, Providence, Creighton. Sorry, Marquette, I don't think so. A lot of big games that they need to, and Butler, you're either going to go up or down because you're beating teams who are in the tournament.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I was just going to say Villanova, the loss to Creighton, is part of that symptomatic of maybe just being a little bored with the season. I think you see that sometimes from protected seeds that are virtually locked in the protected seeds when they go on the road and play against someone that is really breathing fire. Or did Creighton just kind of expose them a little bit? Because Nova, I think they're just 2-3 in their last 5, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I think like all the injuries and that, the lineup juggling they've had to do. Now they've got guys back in, but you still kind of get them reintegrated in. I wouldn't be that concerned. Now I think if Nova loses twice more, like Wednesday is a tough game at Seton Hall. They lose that one, and then if they lose early in the Big East tournament, then I might be a little bit worried that it could be another Tony Flame out.
Yeah.
All right. Let's jump over the Big 12. Joey, the Big 12, we are, as we record this, watching Kansas rolling Texas and West Virginia completely rolling a undermanned Texas Tech team. But aside from that, we're seeing Kansas just, real tough game, real fun game at Texas Tech, but picked up the huge win this weekend.
Well, it wasn't played in Lawrence, so they won. That's been a big theme for the year, so to speak, for Kansas. But Kansas is, for whatever issues Kansas had in the fog, which we discussed ad nauseum in late January through early February, those times are past, especially with what they're doing to an undermanned, albeit undermanned Texas team tonight. Kansas, in my view, has established themselves not just as the fourth number one that was often thrown out. I think they've climbed up that and have a real shot at being a top 1 or 2 seed overall, depending. They need help from Virginia losing. But they've got a real shot if they run the table, I think, of passing even the Big East champ.
Well, Tytel, let me pull the Kansas profile. You're being our committee guest expert here. And let's assume that Kansas does run the table the rest of the way. Do they go right on past Villanova and Xavier, even if one of those two teams does win out as well?
That might be a bit much. Obviously, the whole point of being in the best conference in the nation is if you win it all, that would, in theory, make you the best team in the nation. I think that the other teams have very fine resumes, and if they win their conference tourneys, and for Villanova's case, that will include a win at Seton Hall, which will be a great road win. You could make the argument, but I would find it hard to see them leapfrogging somebody just because the other teams will not have beaten up on chopped liver to get there. They'll have beaten up on other top 25 teams to do so.
Right, and I guess we've got to remember, if Villanova or Xavier runs the table, they likely have a win against the other one in the Big East tournament final.
Yeah, most likely. Which means that Xavier probably won't run the table unless someone beats Villanova.
But let's briefly touch on this Texas team too, Matt. This is a team that's really heading in the wrong direction. I think is very squarely on the bubble, and while losing at Kansas tonight doesn't help, they're running out of chances to improve their resume with a game like this.
And if, first of all, like Mo Bamba's not playing tonight, I don't know how long he's out, but if there's any hint of a doubt he's out, Texas should probably even be considered saying he's their rock. And that's why, like, he's the reason they're a very good defensive team. You take him out, you're not good on offense, and you're not good on defense.
But other than that, they're great.
David, some of the notable games for this week coming up, I guess a big week for Baylor hosting Oklahoma and Kansas State to try to lock in their NCAA tournament bid.
Yeah, again, real bupalicious there. I'm more so for Baylor than Oklahoma. Oklahoma has really just fallen face first here lately, but I do think that they're starting to come out. I mean, I think that they did enough before their free fall that I think that they're okay, although Tydell can probably speak more expertly to it. But Baylor is close, but they can't cruise. They need to pick up a couple more wins, at least one more.
Correct.
2 more would be preferable.
I like that shutout at TCU. That's a team I always thought was just a little bit unlucky. And all of a sudden, they're 8-8. They host Kansas State, which will win. They should be favored by about 6 or 7 points. There's your 9 Big East win, or Big 12 wins.
Yep.
And I think they had a sort of winnable game on the weekend. There you go, 10-8, and could be a sneaky high seed come tournament time.
Well, if they're 10-8, they're way up the seed list, I would think.
Well,
But I thought they were done after the Jalen Fisher injury, and obviously the 3-6 on the road ain't great. But as we see, I think this game against Texas Tech is winnable, depending upon the starting lineup. To go from like your point guard is injured and your season's in doubt to the 3 seed in the best conference, unbelievable coaching job.
Well, people forget, like, they made their NIT run last year without Jalen Fisher as well, that whatever you take from it, that's still a postseason tournament you won without him.
Right. I mean, that's not Tim Miles level coaching, but very good coaching there by Jamie Dixon at TCU. I mean, among the best.
Tata, you can hang your head a moment here while we discuss the next conference. But here is the Pac-12, and there is Arizona, who barely had struggled at Oregon State to get the win. Lost at Oregon, and I mean, is there, Arizona State in 9th place in the conference is the only other team that looks like a lock for the field right now. I mean,
that is bizarre.
And I don't think the way they're sinking. Take a peek at the JNG. They are no longer in pure lock territory. I mean, they'd be an 11th seed in the JNG. Not saying the JNG is perfect, but that is what their resume says. I mean,
yeah, I don't think that's far off of where they should be at this point. I mean, I think if they lose 2 more here, regular season and postseason tournament, and they probably will do that, like, I'm having real hesitation for putting them in my field. Like, this is looking more and more like 2 great days in November, December, and not a tournament level team.
Well, if they're 7-11 in the Pac-12, then I don't see them getting it.
Well, it just goes to show you how strong the Pac-12 is and how they need to have 8 or 9 teams in the field.
And speaking of Bob Hurley, his wallet was a little lighter for his post-game annex after Oregon State because he got a $10,000 fine from the Pac-12.
Well, I guess if anybody had a good week this week in terms of the Pac-12 bubble, which consists of USC, UCLA, Utah, maybe still Washington, although barely, it was USC, Joby, who up the very nice road sweep at Colorado and Utah.
I think USC, I've said a few times you could take conferences and slice them. Oh, so many teams are going to be above the cut line, so many below. I've talked about the 6 ACC teams. It's going to be 3-3. I think Virginia Tech has fully gotten in. Boston College is way out. The Pac-12 has 4 bubble teams right now. 5 if you include the Arizona State, but 4 bubble teams.
I think that's 5. I think that's 5.
Yeah, and so as such, I think that only one, maybe 2, but only one's going to make it, and USC is that team right now. I would have said Utah. I think I did say Utah last week based on the resume. Now I think it's USC. That could change, but USC is legitimately playing well. It's not just – they're not just stumbling in. Winning the Colorado game is actually a very good win. That a lot of other people are tripping up on. They're not tripping up. Give them credit. They're not that top 10 team that we had in preseason, but they are playing, in my opinion, like a tournament team.
Yeah, I would have probably have time to look it up, but are they the only team in the Pac-12 to go through the Colorado-Utah tip undefeated?
I
They
wouldn't
might
be
have been.
surprised. I don't know the answer.
But Tytel, there is the upcoming schedule. The Arizona schools hosting Stanford and Cal, so Arizona State better win both those games. An interesting UCLA USC game on Saturday that might be an elimination type of game.
I mean, I find it hard to believe that I'm even saying that UCLA is still in this. I mean, somebody should feel free to sell me on it, but I understand the Utah-Colorado trip is tough. Their last 6 road games, they're 1-5 with the only win, ironically, at my Wildcats. I mean, this is not a tournament team, I don't think.
All right, fair enough.
Well, they got that and Kentucky away from. I mean, there's stuff on there to indicate that they are, but there's probably more to indicate that they're not.
They probably need Saturday to be real stick at large hopes.
But it is a nice road win against a team right there in the bubble. I think that's the advantage of winning that game. But and you look at the Kentucky, the at Arizona, that's what you like at the top of UCLA's profile to keep them under consideration. A sweep of USC
on the road.
Yeah, but you had to sweep of USC onto the Kentucky neutral Arizona road, David. I kind of like that, just from that top quadrant at least.
Yeah, I mean, from the top quadrant, then there's the rest of the profile.
Oh, true. But let's jump over to the SEC. And Salika, there is the SEC results from the past week where Auburn beats Alabama, loses to Florida. You got Tennessee there who struggled but did win at Ole Miss and did beat Florida. I mean, what did you see this week that really stood out?
I saw Arkansas finally getting a decent road win at Alabama, and even then it was kind of a bit of a wash because they also had the early lead against Kentucky but ended up losing that one at home. So it kind of goes both ways for the Razorbacks, but I think getting that road win of significance was probably going to be a more important hole in their resume to fill.
Yeah, and David, speaking about Kentucky, a very nice week for the Wildcats at just the right time in the season, winning at Arkansas and then beating Missouri at home.
Yeah, I know. I think that especially after losing the 4 games in a row that they did, those aren't like great wins. It's not like they went to Virginia and won or went to Xavier or Villanova and won or went to Nebraska and won. But, I mean, it was 2 really solid wins against tournament teams that sort of righted their ship.
Well, Joe, we've got to mention they could be the 3 seed in the SEC tournament, and they're squarely on the bubble, if even on the bubble. But Mississippi State won at A&M, beat South Carolina, and there they are, 9-7.
I'm looking at them. Yeah,
Mississippi State has hung around like in the background. They beat up a bunch of patsies in the preseason to get a bloated record. So you need to actually beat. Luckily, they play in the SEC, which gives you a ton of opportunities to beat tournament caliber talent. And they've now won on the road. I mean, they legitimately won on the road against a fellow tournament team. They have, I mean, the worst loss quadrant 2. They don't have, and those quadrant 2 wins, 2 of them are against tournament teams in Alabama and Missouri. Yeah, they're at home, but
yeah, but you have to look at what Alabama and Missouri have done on the road.
I'm not saying they're a tournament team yet, but they played themselves into a position where they can do it. They go out, they beat Tennessee at home. They can't probably afford to lose at LSU. I've been actually pinpointing that LSU Mississippi State as a potential play-in sort of game if LSU can get a win as well. But they actually have a shot here because they haven't dramatically messed up. You know, I don't like the loss at Vanderbilt and Ole Miss. But
yeah, I want to pull up Missouri's profile because I'm not so sold there 100% in either after that last week, especially the Ole Miss loss at home. That was –
there they are, Matt.
It's still a bunch of nice. Well, the bottom 2, but it's still four really good quadrant 1 wins. The bottom 2, not as so, but yeah. The 2
I think South Carolina will lose to get out of that RPI top 75 at some point, and Central Florida could as well. So,
and Mizzou's dealing with injuries, aren't they? Suddenly,
Porter. They have the Porter situation, whether he'll play or not play. Sort of thing.
Right. Well, yeah, of course, with Porter. But I don't know. I think with Kansas being a 1 seed, I think Mizzou is a solid 8 or a 9 seed.
Let me ask you that as our selection committee guessing expert. Mississippi State, especially if they can get that huge win this weekend over Tennessee, but that garbage 309 non-conference strength of schedule. I mean, this could be but if you're third place in the SEC, that's going to put 7 teams in the field. How could you be left out?
I mean, I don't think Missouri is going to get left out if they can beat Vandy on the road. They should. The Arkansas game will be tough. That'll make them 19-12, and then I assume they can win an opening SEC tourney. Maybe not, because obviously it's a deep conference. They're 19-13. Like, it gets a little sketchy, but I can't put them behind Mississippi State. I mean, 2-7 on the road, not that 4-6 is much better.
Yeah. I will say, I think that's a real banana skin for you. Like, Vandy isn't great chicks, but they're competitive most nights, and having to play that in a must-win game, I just assume almost rather be playing a middle-of-the-pack team where you know you'll get up for it.
So Titel, is Mississippi State on your radar?
I guess they kind of have to be by default of winning 21 games, but frankly, like, I don't even have them as the first 4 out. I mean, I think they're like the 7th 4 out or something.
Yeah, that's about where I have them.
David, anything you're looking forward to this week in the SEC besides that Tennessee-Mississippi State game tomorrow night we were just discussing?
Auburn and Arkansas, I think that's going to be pretty good. Just more of a showcase game. The Florida-Bama game is going to be pretty good. I mean, Alabama having a really good year. They're fun to watch at home. Florida, you just don't know what they're going to do on any given night. But I don't. That Auburn-Arkansas game should be fun.
I might recommend Alabama winning that too, because if they go 0-2 this week and lose the SEC tournament, you're at 15 losses, like 17 or 18-15. That again might be, even with all their decent wins, that still might not be the Earth's best position to be in.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Let's jump back to the Big Ten, which we skipped over earlier. But the regular season is over. Conference tournament about to start. But let's talk about the final week of the regular season that saw Michigan State capture the outright regular season title. With, I think they're up to 12 wins in a row now. And John T., let me ask you about this Michigan State team, because they're still, number 2 in the polls, but maybe barely on the 2-seed line for a lot of people still.
I mean, if you look at the metrics, it seems like all of Purdue's metrics almost across the board are better than Michigan State's metrics. Obviously, the top ones over here in KenPom, top 10 in adjusted offense and defense. That's why you're one of the best teams in the nation in the rankings. A 12-game win streak is nothing to sneeze at in any conference, much less the Big Ten. But I still don't – I'm not a total believer just because I don't know if Bridges is going to be eligible. Michigan State off the court, basketball and other stuff has tons of stuff swirling around. And the top 5 seeds, yes, the top 5 seeds, all of a shot, I think, at winning this tournament.
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly the top 5. I mean, you got Nebraska playing their way in the 4th place, and, certainly inside the bubble at this point.
I've got to do it. I hate doing it.
They deserve it. Put them up.
But let's take a look at this Nebraska profile here. And is there anything here with 3 Tier 1 and Tier 2 wins combined that says that this is an at-large quality team?
Well, you're leaving something off, Chad. You don't have the head coach on the profile. You need to put that on the profile, and then that would certainly get them in the field.
I'm just going to take the screen down on that, David. I'm actually going to take it down for a different reason.
I would like to thank Tim Miles officially for putting a bullet in that awful Penn State resume and just killing it off, because I was sick and tired of seeing Lenardi and all these other people just for ratings points say, oh, this Penn State team's on the bubble. They weren't even Titel made the 7th 4 out. Penn State was on the 10th 4, last 4 out. I mean, they were so far out. I am just happy that Nebraska said, no, this madness of a team that can only beat Ohio State should not be anywhere near this field. Thank you, Tim.
I hate to be the bearer of bad tidings, Joby, but look who Ohio State is in their pod. if they beat Penn State a third time, they are not going away.
Oh, God.
Oh, and then they go into the semis against a Purdue team that they nearly beat. So
This is your new VD team for 2018.
Yeah,
I think Penn State can win this tournament.
we do see there, though, Michigan having to play the extra game, Nebraska winning the tiebreaker for the 4 seed. That is the Big Ten tournament bracket. David, do you have a prediction for us on who wins this Big Ten tournament?
Well, yeah, the Huskers. I mean, all the way, Tim Miles.
Tytel, do you have a real prediction for us?
What?
Because
As I posted in my conference tourney previews, I am picking the Buckeyes to go all the way for a couple of reasons. One, they've beaten each of the other top 5 seeds in this tournament. 2, they have the best player in the conference. It is not Miles Bridges. It is Data Bates Diop. And 3, Chris Holtman, albeit Tim Miles is a close second, is the coach of the year.
they've just better hope Northwestern beats Penn State. Pat, you had a comment also on it?
Yeah, I actually think this is bad luck for Nebraska in that I always think in these conference tournaments, the team that already gets a game behind them kind of has the edge over the team that has the day off. So I think it almost been better Nebraska go, win a game, get a little momentum going, and then play Michigan. Instead now Michigan, who should probably get by their first game, then gets to play them with a day under their belts and then used to the MSG cord and ribs and all that. And I think Michigan wins and that's their hopes.
All right, well, let's go ahead and I'll bring the rest of the standings back up on the screen here in half a second. David, we're going to turn over to the American next, though.
Oh, I was just trying to I can't find it, but
I think Michigan wins the whole dang thing.
yeah. Wednesday night, the tournament. God, I wanted to get the screen share up, but I can't. I ruined it. But I'll just say it. Wednesday night, the Big Ten tournament getting underway with that huge doubleheader. Lower level tickets available on StubHub for $5.75.
Hey, got Iowa, Illinois, and Rutgers. Hey, but David, there is the American standings. Real quick here, kind of held here, other than the very strange Memphis win over Houston.
Memphis has been playing reasonably well lately. If we could, I mean, they're 100 miles from the tournament, but are they? I think they're playing good enough to where they can make some noise in this conference tournament.
I don't know how far is it from Memphis to Nashville where the tournament's being played.
About 200 miles.
Okay, that's how far.
Well, given the Feds don't show up to Memphis, I don't think they're making the trip to Nashville.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
I mean, yeah, you got a lot. I mean, this conference has 3 teams into the rankings. They have a Tulsa team that's been playing well, although that's nails on a chalkboard to say that. So, I mean, if the chalk holds to the semifinals, I mean, it could be a really compelling semifinal and final for this tournament.
Well, yeah, and Joby, the round 2 of the game this season probably coming up on Sunday, Cincinnati at Wichita State. And we're then going to see round 3 of that in the conference tournament?
I think so. I mean, Houston certainly deserves a mention, as David was pointing out. But the class of this conference is Cincinnati and Wichita State, 2 teams that are I think Cincinnati is a protected seed right now. Nothing's set in stone, but they are. I think right now they are. And Wichita State has the potential to play their way in. They're probably on the 5 line realistically, maybe 6. But wins like a win versus another win versus Cincinnati would do the Shockers a great deal of good in their quest to be able to be a top 4 seed.
Sleek, are you calling an upset here Thursday night, circling Wichita State UCF?
That is a classic trap game right here, because if Central Florida wins this, that would give the Bearcats the title outright, assuming that UC were able to win at Tulane.
All right. Matt, over in the A10, the Rhodey picked up a couple more wins, as did St. Bonaventure, who is suddenly right there back in the picture.
Yeah, I think it's pretty close. I don't think they're quite as far in as the J&G might have, as much I respect Joe, but I think they're probably in, but I would still think more towards dated, or maybe just above dated. But
I got to ask Tytel, I just saw you cover your ears and shake your head. And I saw your field a couple days ago, and you had the Bonnies in it.
Not by choice, but because all of America has them in, and I don't want to be the lone person saying no because I would be the only one because everybody is. Like, they have rebounded, and they deserve a top 2 seed in this conference tournament, which I will be at next week, and they deserve to, like, be in consideration. The metrics are pretty solid. If they lose the title game to Rhode Island by a point, I'm going to have to spend all of Sunday afternoon thinking about whether they're in because I'm not 100% convinced at all.
Can we pull up their profile, Chad? Them and Rhodey, I guess.
And I might add, notice how the KPI strength of record in the J&G are almost identical in their view of the Bonnies. It's I know that the other metrics like KenPom have them something a little out, so it's a fight between the two metrics, you could say.
I mean, I like the win at Syracuse, and the win at Buffalo is actually decent. The home win over Rhodey, I could make a case for them if I really had to, but I guess my thing about the Bonnies is if you didn't like them a month ago, why do you like them now? Like what is it that beating a bunch of sub-NIT teams did to impress you? Other than now, maybe or is it that the metrics got better because the Syracuse win got a little better? But I don't think, and I know they've been winning, but they've been winning against teams that aren't going to the NIT, and I just think that they're getting maybe a little too much credit for doing that. Now, Tytel guesses the real committee, and chances are the real committee will like them. A lot of people seem to think so. I feel the way about them now as I did back in January. What have they done since then to make you think they're any better than they were then?
I will say they're the only for like 3 months he's beaten Rhodey, and Rhodey played decently in that game too. That wasn't like Rhodey kicked it away to him.
I'll tell you, they do have 2 very dangerous games this week before they even get to that conference tournament. Davidson at home is the team that's tied with them for second place of the conference. At St. Louis is the 4th place team. So I'm not certain the Bonnies get through this week unscathed, and that may be the nail in the coffin for them, so to speak.
Yeah, I would say it's probably less than 50-50, given that there'll be probably a couple of about 3-point favorite in the Davidson game, and maybe a 1 or 2 point favorite at SLU. And given that those are both essentially toss-ups, I got to figure they lose one of those.
I'll save it for the mock committee, but think about what you're saying. Toss-up games against sub-NIT teams. So why is this a tournament team if it's a toss-up against sub-NIT teams?
I will say, like, Davidson's not an NCAA team. I might argue if we were an NIT committee for Davidson. I think they were horribly unlucky to start the year and really caught fire. And it would actually stun me if they won the A-10 tourney. But
I'm sorry to tell you this, Matt, but we're only doing the mock committee for the NCAA. We're not doing the NIT.
And I would say Davidson is at least a CBI team. So there you go.
Well, anybody with a coach that's represented by the Gazelle Group is a CBI team. So we don't.
Stalika, Mountain West very quickly, Nevada 2-0 week, and that's kind of all we need to discuss in the Mountain West, correct?
Yeah, and they pretty much wrapped up the 1 seed, given that they already have the sweep of Boise State in their back pocket.
I really like this Boise State team.
But otherwise, the most notable news off the court was Larry Eustace, I guess formally resigning today since he had already been on paid administrative leave for a couple weeks now.
Yeah. And also SDSU sitting down Malik Pope, who I think that's not huge news, but I thought they could maybe be a threat in the conference tourney. But without Malik Pope, he's their best talent, and I think they would go the brief hope the Aztecs would have.
Nevada does have a tough road trip this week at Vegas and at San Diego State before the conference tournament. David, you don't think Boise can actually make it out large bid still if they went out, do you?
Well, no, but if you're going to push St. Bonaventure, I'm going to push Boise.
Okay. Let's turn, before we go over to the West Coast Conference, I want to very quickly mention a team that's still in the top 5, and that is Middle Tennessee here at the top of Conference USA, another 2-0 week, and or I think they only played 1 game this week.
Yeah, they did. But I mean,
that's
how amazing this Middle Tennessee team is. Played 1 game, went 2-0. What a week.
But again, the question, Tytel, let me ask it again. We ask it every week. If Middle Tennessee wins, they've got a huge game coming up, a huge week this week, hosting Western Kentucky and Marshall. But if they win those 2 games, make it to the CUSA final, are they in?
It's a great question. I don't know that I can answer that right now. I can't definitively because there's so much to go on. Even if you are doing something on Thursday, cancel it. because you should watch that game against Western Kentucky. It's going to be fantastic. The resume is good. They've lost to a couple teams, I think, outside the top 100, or at least one of them. So that's why the strength of schedule is down there, as we will see while I stall. They have some great wins, and they've played some decent schedules. Non-conference strength of schedule 6. That's what the tournament committee likes to see. You don't like to see losses to Belmont and Marshall, and I don't know how the heck Murray State and Old Dominion are in the Tier 1, but, it's a decent little resume.
I will say Murray's also that high in the Pomeroy, so I'll respect them being a top 70 team just generally.
And unlike Rhode Island, who's kind of a home court hero at 15-0, I believe Middle Tennessee on the road was 10-1 or 12-1 or something.
Yeah, Middle Tennessee, that that fan base and that school and that community really getting jacked for this team. They rarely sell out. They're expecting a sellout Thursday night, and all I've got to say to that is, what the hell took so long? You've been to the round of 32 2 years in a row. About time you woke up to how good this team was.
You were awesome last year. You're pretty darn good this year. God.
Yeah.
It's a heavy population center in that part of – it's basically Nashville suburb.
Yeah.
It's Murfreesboro is not a small, remote area.
It's not, and you just wonder why. I mean, it's a big school. It's a state school, and they have a lot of centrally located alumni, and they have a really good basketball team and have for at least 2 years. They were good 3 years ago when they advanced as a 15 seed, but that was more of a surprise. But last year they were good, and they're good this year too. So, finally, after all of that, people are starting to get jacked up about how good the team is. Better late than never, I guess.
I just want to jump in here. One quick comment. You see Charlotte in red there. It's nothing. Well, what that means is teams that show up in red, and we very rarely see them on the major conferences at this point of the year until tournament play. But those teams have been eliminated from the conference tournament, so that's why Charlotte is in red there. For those of you that might be wondering,
but they could still get in at large, right?
No. Well, not if they're removed from the survival board.
They will be off of our survival board, which we'll get to in a few minutes here. But let's real quickly discuss the West Coast Conference, where Gonzaga continues to roll. Picked up a very nice win at BYU, Joby, over the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, usually they lose at home versus the Cougars, so they do win in Provo. That shouldn't come as a big shock. But Gonzaga looks great. They are the team that is the protected seed level, darling, so to speak. Who's going to take that spot that Oklahoma vacated, or other teams that are tailing off? Arizona, unfortunately, John Titel. Who takes their spot? Gonzaga is the team that likely does it. I
think they should be on the 3 line myself. I'm that high at them.
I don't know if the committee will give them the 3 line.
I don't.
They probably won't.
But I think the committee will give them the 4.
I like this team a lot. I mean, they've been kind of quiet. I guess just been kind of hovering around there. But these are the national runners-up. I think they're up to 6th in the polls, and their resume, while limited, they played really well in the few chances that they had. This is a really dangerous team that not only could get a protected seed, but that could hold serve at least to the Sweet 16.
And you do not want to be that 4th number 1, because all the potential number 1s are teams where the 4th of those, whether it's the Musketeers or the Wildcats or Jayhawks, et cetera, they're going to be shipped out west. And do you really want to be playing Gonzaga out west in the Sweet 16 if you're that 4th number 1? You don't.
Actually, that sounds great. Where do I sign up for that?
Matt, there's the West Coast Conference bracket here. I mean, other than a potential BYU run, I think which would require win over St. Mary's, maybe. But we're probably looking at Gonzaga beating St. Mary's in the finals, though. Correct?
I'm assuming that as well. I do think if St. Mary's loses before the finals, they might really be sweating.
Titel, would you agree with that? That if St. Mary's loses, maybe, especially if they lose to the Santa Clara Pepperdine winner in that quarterfinal, sweating things out?
I don't, but I'd like to hear Matt's argument because I really don't.
Man, because that resume is so thin that, like, if you took it, that would a bad loss. I guess BYU probably wouldn't be horrendous if they lost that in the semis, but it's still, I don't know, man. I still wouldn't want to be going that. Win at Gonzaga, amazing. We all love them. I think the committee's going to love them at least as a 3 or 4. But, man, like, that's it. That's their profile. They quietly, New Mexico State falling off has hurt their profile.
And what's also – that's very true on New Mexico State, Matt. But what's helping them a little bit is St. Mary's in the past has been one of these – we're going to have a 300 out-of-conference schedule to go along with a weak conference. This time, their overall conference out-of-conference schedule is not awful. And that, to a degree, could, if they had scheduled their normal awful out-of-conference of having –
it was awful.
They'd be dead.
I think if you take a deep dive on it, though, it wasn't that good. Yeah. Like, basically, the games they could control, what they do, maybe like the Stanford. No, they didn't play Stanford this year, did they? Or did they? I'm telling you, the games they
not
could
that Stanford's particularly good. I mean,
no,
top
but that's
half
like,
of the Pac-12, more than Arizona State can say.
But like, I'm telling you, that level of game, I can live like
stand correct.
The games they could control were awful, and like. I know as a frequent listener to the a college basketball podcast, CBS, Norlander frequently mentioned Danny Hurley called up for Rhode Island to offer to do a home and home. He sought it out from Dan Hurley. St. Mary's turned them down. And, like, when you play that level of schedule you do and you basically rush off what would have been a great game, I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for you.
Yeah, the only Pac-12 team they played this year was Washington State, who was bad, and they lost to them. So
they also beat Cal.
That wasn't scheduled for them. That was part of the winning legacy.
Yeah, they did beat Cal.
Yeah, they did. They beat the 11th and 12th Pac-12 team.
They lost.
Stupid. Like, man, you don't want to mess with St. Mary's.
Let's turn to the Championship Week video notebook portion of our show because, David, Atlantic Sun action tipped off tonight, and there's the results right there on the screen, the 2018 ASUN tournament, where we saw 4 games that were looking like blowouts, but we did finally, I guess, have one semi-close final there in the 4-5 game.
Yeah, NJIT fell behind by about 20 within 3 or 4 minutes. It wasn't that quick, but it seemed like it. And we're down by 20 at the half, clawed back in front of a half-empty house that really got jacked for the end of the game. I think they got as close as 1, but couldn't quite get over the top. The other 3 games, if you missed them, don't bother going back to watch them. They're archived on ESPN3. It's a better idea to break your computer than to watch those games. They were just really bad, uninteresting, unentertaining games.
Well,
March Madness is off to a fantastic start.
They were all close at the half, including Stetson, who had fallen down by 16 to Lipscomb, came all the way back, took a lead right before halftime, and then just got blown out in the second half. But the second half of those games were all snoozers.
Upstate actually made Gulf Coast sweat a little bit until the coach flipped out. What was there 2 technicals and an eject?
It was a technical on a player, followed by a technical on the coach. 4 free throws. It was an ugly scene there at Upstate, actually. But
you could say that was a nice parting gift for USC Upstate. So enjoy your trip to the Big South next year.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, Matt, you weren't with us last night for the preview, but of these 4 teams left, who do you think wins this tournament?
I'm going with Gulf Coast. I think they have the most talented roster, and I think enough talent that they'll be significant underdogs in a first-round game, but there's enough talent on that roster where it wouldn't floor me if they at least made a challenge, and if they were hitting, like, wild from 3, maybe win. Like, I think they've been a little disappointing on the year on the whole, given their talent, but still, they run it in an ASUN play. I think they should win the conference tournament fairly comfortably. It'd be kind of a little bit of a frisky 15-level seed.
All right. Well, Joby, tomorrow there's 4 games tomorrow night, including the 8, 9, and 7-10 games of the Big South. Maybe not so much what you're looking for in those 2 games, but how about the conference? Do you have a pick for us in the Big South?
Radford seems to be a darling for folks, but UNC Asheville's the number 1 seed for a reason. I feel like they've all year been the leaders and the team to beat. I'll go with UNC Asheville. Homer Pickham's the 1 seed, but Radford's someone to look at as you go forward.
An exciting week. If you're a college basketball fan this week, you want to be in Asheville, North Carolina to watch Thursday and Friday the quarters and semis of the Big South, and you've also got the SoCon tournament there. Tytel, you heading to Asheville?
I've only been once in my life. It was for a friend's wedding, and it was fantastic. So I recommend people visit. It's a great town in Nash Vegas.
Yeah. Charleston Southern Presby. This tournament is an interesting format because the opening round is at campus sites. The quarters and semis are going to be at Asheville, as you mentioned. Championship game at the highest remaining seed. So, I mean, lots of mobility in this tournament. But if you haven't, if you don't want, unless you watch Under the Radar, you probably haven't seen the enormo dome that Charleston Southern plays in. You're going to want to tune in tomorrow for that, just to see the arena. It is worth it right there.
It is the smallest arena in Division I there at Charleston Southern. David, who's your pick in this conference?
Asheville. They have home court advantage. They've been fantastic at home. I don't think they've lost a home game in conference play. If they have, it's only one. And they've beat, not just beat, but beat Winthrop rather handily about a week ago. I like how they're playing now.
Well, Tytel, I think you went with the 5 seed in your write-up about this conference, did you not?
I did. It's not the best pick I've ever made because, as Kobe said, a lot of people are on Radford, and I believe Radford swept Liberty this year. It's just that you can't pick 1 seeds every time because they don't always win. And in this tournament, 3 of the past 5 champs were not even just a 1 seed. We're not even a top 2 seed. So I tried to go against the grain a little bit, but it's a good argument to say that Asheville's the best team playing at home. So it's hard to argue with that.
Salika, here's the Patriot League where tomorrow night we've got the 8-9 game between Loyola and Army, 7-10 between Lafayette and American. But aside from those 2 games, let me ask you: is this just one of those? Is Bucknell just going to run through this conference?
I think Colgate is going to offer some challenges themselves. I did actually get to see Colgate in late December while I was on vacation and visiting the Northeast. So they certainly have the players that could give Bucknell fits. But let's not forget their epic meltdown, and I think it was at Bucknell a couple weeks ago. So definitely they'll want some revenge for that one.
Well, Matt, what do you think? Are you with? Are you on just Bucknell in the Patriot League, or?
Yeah, what you're mentioning, some leagues you could take a risk in picking something. This is not one. I'm taking Bucknell. I think, again, they've probably on the whole been a little disappointing, but very strong for most of conference play. And I can't see this group not getting back to March. And then, again, being a dangerous 15-level seed that has probably underachieved a little bit to get there, but still could maybe give it 2 a game.
Well, this is the conference that we saw Holy Cross come out of the 9 seed to take, didn't we not, David, a couple of years ago? So
yeah, after not winning a road game all year, or maybe it was just I think it was a road game period all year. They won 4 in a row. Remember this conference tournament at campus sites all the way through. They were the worst seeded team in every game, won them all. One of the more remarkable things ever, like during certainly in the Patriot League, but really during championship week, we've seen poor seeded teams and double-digit seeded teams win, but not 4 true road games. It was rather spectacular. That being said, I don't think anybody playing tomorrow is going to win. Interesting thing, if they were, this is kind of fun to think about, they are essentially, they would have to win their next 11 games, assuming that they went to Dayton as the one of the first 4 as the 16 seeds. Are they as far away from winning the national title as you can possibly be and still be playing?
And that's what
they might.
Someone other than Bucknell wins, are they probably going to Dayton?
Yeah, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. David, given the number of rounds it takes with the double bye system in the
you're right.
ACC, Georgia Tech or someone like that, Pitt. But let's give someone who's playing who can actually have.
Well, Pitt might be 12 away because
game maybe, and
Yeah, if Pitt wins the ACC, they may still be a 16 seed in Dayton.
Yeah.
One last piece of news for the night, and then we'll get to our final thoughts. But our survival board, which hopefully will be on the site as we finish up our site migration, but here it is.
Yes.
As of right now, David, after the games of the days today, we are down to 333 teams remaining alive with a shot to win the national championship.
Well, yeah, and you got to scroll down a little bit to the ASUN. We normally update this on the air, not doing it tonight for some reason.
We can't update it on the air tonight because of our some off-camera issues, but we do have the updated version as of right now.
Right, and this is important. And to show you that the committee looks at this, you might recall 2 or 3 weeks ago they released their preliminary protected seeds. Like who was it that had been? I think Incarnate Word, and it was removed from there by then. And again, you didn't see Incarnate Word as one of the protected seeds. Again, showing you that the committee paying attention to the survival board.
On that note, let me run through everybody for any other final thoughts or comments about everything that's going on that we discussed tonight. And Matt, let me start with you.
Yeah, say we're going through discussing some of these conferences. I think some preconceived thoughts I had of these teams being in the tournament 2-3 weeks ago, and suddenly taking a close look at it, I'm not so sure. Like, we've all thought from about the 6 line on down was pretty muddled, but then we thought, okay, you're pretty safely in. But now some of these teams taking a closer look, and even we mentioned Alabama. If they lose 3 in a row at 17-15, I don't think they're in this tournament, even though we've all thought they're in and even had them as somewhere like a 7-8 seed for about the past month. So it'll be interesting to see going in if something like that happens, or even like more shockingly in Arizona State. But I think we got to maybe enter it with a little bit of a fresh mind that take a closer look at these profiles on the whole and then see, are these teams really in the tournament?
All right, good point. Joby.
We've had this cropped up a little bit during our SEC conversation correctly. One of the reasons why Mississippi State, as John puts out, John Titel says, in the 7-4 out, despite some of the metrics saying, hey, maybe they should be higher, is because they played such an awful out-of-conference schedule, that 300-plus schedule. When I was going through teams tonight, there's another team that is starting to approach the bubble that has a 300-plus out-of-conference schedule, and it sneaks up on you because they did have one game that everybody knows out of conference. But Florida State's out-of-conference schedule stunk. It's really bad. If Florida State continues this subtle slide like they did against NC State, watch out. You know, they lose out, they're going to lose out because they could easily be punished for that awful out-of-conference schedule. Yeah, they beat Florida. Who else did you play? Played a lot of Stetsons, I think.
A lot of Stetsons.
Stetson no longer on the survival board.
Titel.
So tonight's history lesson. When is the last time that my Penn Quakers made the tourney the same year that my Arizona Wildcats did not make the tourney? We're going to have to take you back to 1982. Wow. To give you an idea of how long ago that was. 2 of Penn's top 3 scoring guards that season, Fran McCaffrey, current coach at Iowa, Carl Racine, the current Attorney General of the District of Columbia. Penn made the tournament, lost to St. John's by 10 points. The entire Quaker team made 8 free throws. St. John's got 9 free throws alone from some freshman forward named Chris Mullen. Now, I'm not saying Penn's going to make the tourney. All they have to do, it looks like, they might have to beat a Columbia team that at the time could be 9-18 and still making the Ivy tourney. God help them. And since Harvard swept Yale this season, I'll put Harvard in the game as well in the title game. Penn just beat Harvard by 3 on Saturday. Thank God, it was very close. They might need to beat them again. Here's hoping for a repeat of 1982.
Salika.
I teased this a few weeks ago as far as college basketball's imperialism map where you beat certain teams and you take over their territory. I'm going to give you a little bit of an update right here. And given losses by teams like St. John's and Arizona over the week, we now have quite a few territories for Oregon, and your DePaul Blue Demons on here.
Oh, there it is. All right.
Okay.
So that's the risk of college basketball.